Ikki Kurogane is a teenager who's known as the worst one throughout the school for his lack of talent. He prepares himself for his usual morning training. Elsewhere, Stella Vermillion, the princess of Vermillion Kingdom, is soon to be arriving in Japan and is going to be enrolling to Hagun Academy, Ikki's school. Upon finishing his training, Ikki returns back to his room and walks in on the half-naked Stella, who is changing, with the situation getting worse due to Ikki's bad attempt to stripping down himself to make her not feel embarrassed. Ikki was then summoned to the director's office, where he was criticized by Kurano for his indecent behavior. Before summoning Stella into their office, Ikki formally apologizes to Stella. Stella, however, demands Ikki to perform harakiri as an apology, much to Ikki's dismay, who has to just simply say no. Not feeling the need to do so after only just seeing her underwear, enraged over Ikki's comments, Stella starts to emit flames. With Kurano leaving the office to avoid being involved, Ikki, in desperation, claims that he was mesmerized by Stella's beauty, surprising the girl as her flames are weakened out of shyness. As Ikki's trying to explain the situation again, Kurano comes back and reveals that both Ikki and Stella are roommates now, much to both of their surprise. Kurano then brings the two of them back to their room and reveals the reason as to why they're roommates now, with this being much to Stella's displeasure, as she gives Ikki another impossible demand. To solve the problem, Kurano gives both of them the option of settling the issue with a duel, which eventually escalates into the said duel, with the loser deferring to the winner. But in Stella's case, she wants to have this be a lifelong contract, demanding to do so after Ikki's casual remark of victory, and they prepare for the fight. Stella is later seen preparing for her match with Ikki, as she reminisces on her efforts to master her power, and is displeased how everyone views her as someone who's just talented, and not someone who works hard. Meanwhile, at the battle arena, Ikki is seen conversing with Kurano on the terms of his graduation, with him having to win the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival. Stella then arrives to the arena, and their match officially begins, with both sides materializing their respective devices. Stella starts the duel by attacking aggressively, but was continuously countered by Ikki, and he counters back by copying Stella's sword technique, almost landing an attack on Stella, but has it blocked. Due to the difference in magic, Stella, while lamenting on winning in an undesirable way, activates one of her strongest attacks, Katharatera Salamander, with this being out of respect for Ikki. Ikki, willing to admit that he lacks the ability as a mage knight, and reveals his own trump card, Ito Shura, which that forcibly removes all of Ikki's physical limits, drastically increasing his own power, dodging all of Stella's attacks. Ikki successfully lands an attack on Stella, winning the duel, before collapsing due to exhaustion. Stella is then seen in the hospital room, being taken care of, and Kurano comes into her room. Stella questions Kurano on how exactly Ikki is an F-rank knight, to which Kurano explains that the system is based on Blazer's ability, not actual fighting ability. Stella asks Kurano how Ikki failed, and Kurano explains that it's due to a complicated situation. Kurano then recommends to Stella to follow Ikki's footsteps, as he is someone who works very hard as well. Stella then enters Ikki's room, finding him asleep on his bed. Stella gets on top of Ikki and begins to feel his muscles, being shocked by her first touch of a man. Stella then gets bonked on her head for her thoughts. After Ikki wakes up to find her on top of him, Stella then talks with Ikki with apologizing to him, having unfair judgments of the boy since she didn't know him. Ikki then smiles and reminds Stella of her servitude to him. Ikki then orders Stella to be his friend and roommate. Stella agrees and the two of them bump fists, promising on making this arrangement work. A silver-haired girl is seen on a train, thinking about someone that she loved very dearly, having to suffer great pain because of their mother and father. Stella and Ikki are then seen having just finished their daily 20-kilometer run together. Ikki offers Stella a drink from his bottle, who's initially shocked at the offer, with this being an indirect kiss. Stella then takes it. As Ikki is talking excitedly about having his sister come to the school, Yuri Areki, the homeroom teacher, introduces herself to all the freshmen and Ikki. Yuri reminds the class about this year's participation for the 7 Sword Art Festival would be dependent on the winning selection battles, and nothing else, and they're going to be informed through this by the student IDs. Yuri then cheers on all of her students in the participation battles, then quickly throws up blood, and falling unconscious. Yuri is then taken to the infirmary, along with Stella and Ikki. Ikki then explains to Stella that it's because of Yuri that he was able to get into the school. Yuri also mentions how unfortunate last year was for him. Ikki and Stella walk through the hall, and Stella asks what does she mean by that. Ikki then explains his situation from last year, how he wasn't able to take any classes, and before he can properly explain to Stella, a girl named Kagami then appears to hug him, causing Stella to get jealous, walking away. Ikki chases after her, as the girl in silver hair just appears, and Ikki recognizes the girl as Shizuku, his sister. Shizuku then gives him a kiss on the mouth, shocking everyone around him, with this including Ikki and Stella. Stella interrupts him as she's about to give Ikki another kiss, causing the sister to be angered by her interruption. Stella then explains that she's interrupting them because she's Ikki's servant, and also mentioning that they slept together in the same bed. Shizuku then deploys her device, Yoshiguri, in order to kill Stella, and is confident that she's going to be able to defeat her because her element is water. Stella deploys her device in response, and the two of them start to clash in the hallway. But because of this, the two of them are punished and have to clean up all the facilities because of their actions. After they're done cleaning, Shizuki and Stella continue to argue about Shizuki's behavior with Ikki, with the sister bringing up Ikki's past and how everyone treated him as he didn't exist, especially his family. Shizuki then ends the conversation, leaving to go to her room. Shizuki is then welcomed by her roommate, Nagi. Stella then meets Ikki outside in the front of the school, where she questions him about his past and the treatment of his family. Ikki decides to tell her the truth and depicts how his family treats him over the years. One day the boy couldn't take it anymore, and he decided to run away from home during a very bad storm. And the moment he was about to collapse, Ryoma, his grandfather, appears in front of him, encouraging him not to give up. As he carries him back to the home, Ikki continues to explain that his family has been pressuring the school and making him fail to make sure that Ikki never becomes a knight. While Ikki and Stella are talking, Shizuki talks to her roommate and tells him about Ikki's situation. Shizuki then tells him his resolve to give him love no matter what situation he's in. Ikki's then seen in the bath with Stella, with her coming in to wear a pink bikini, offering to wash his back. Ikki's reluctant to this, but Stella insists that a servant must serve her master. While washing the front of Ikki's body, Stella notices that he keeps staring at her, asking does he like big melons. Noticing that he enjoys this, Ikki admits that he does like melons, and Stella decides to push her melons on Ikki's back. Much to Ikki's surprise, with the air getting steamier, Ikki wants to move, but Stella doesn't let him, with her garment falling off. Having her bare melons on his back, it makes her very embarrassed, causing her to become red. Ikki notices the bikini on the ground, and believes she was doing this the entire time, but this makes Stella slap him. Ikki and Stella are seen practicing against each other. When the practice has ended, Ikki learns that Stella is going to be fighting against Momotani. Ikki tried to tell Stella about her opponent, but she refused to learn anything about it, with her believing that these matches are practices for real fights, with it being impossible for her to know her opponent before fighting them, and wanting to properly test her own ability for a real fight. The first bell had rung to go to class, and before they went back to class, Stella had tried to ask Ikki out, but was interrupted by a message from Shizuki. It's revealed that Ikki said yes to going out with Shizuku, along with Nagi as well, as Stella has invited herself along. The 4 Hagun Academy students travel to the mall where Ikki notices that Shizuki is looking very dressed up. As Stella's amazed by them all, Stella tries to hold Ikki's hand after seeing Shizuki trying to do the same, but is unable to do so after Shizuki's interference. While the students were enjoying their day off, the mall security has been taken over by terrorists. The students are then seen enjoying some sweets, and Shizuki is embarrassed with Ikki when he reaches to clean off her face, with there being cream on it. Stella tries to get Ikki to do the same to her, but it ends with a different result, embarrassing herself. Nagi and Ikki go to the bathroom by themselves, where Ikki notices that Shizuki doesn't usually open up to people, but is shown to be very close to him, so he properly thanks him for being a good friend to her. Nagi then notes that Ikki is exactly as she describes, a very strong and kind young man, but also notes there's something ambiguous about him. Nagi then quiets Ikki as 2 terrorists barge into the bathroom, one shooting his gun after immediately entering. Ikki and Nagi, however, are nowhere to be found. As the 2 terrorists leave, Nagi and Ikki are seen coming out of a different dimension, wanting to find out what's going on. Nagi reveals his device, Darkness Hermit, and explains that he can move around in the shadows. Ikki and Nagi then appear at the security room, where they find the 2 security guards knocked out. Ikki then calls Kurano, who tells Ikki about the situation, with it already being on the news, and the police having them all surrounded, explaining that the terrorist group Rebellion is a group that consists of people thinking that Blazers are a new breed of human, and have attacked them all in demand of a huge ransom. Stella and Shizuku are seen with the hostages, as Shizuki tells Stella not to do anything stupid, as she has to come up with a plan. Just then a mother is crying out for one of the terrorists not to hurt her son, but to no avail, as the terrorists are trying to kill the son. The son is however saved by Stella, who's now being revealed. Bisho, who's the leader of the group, appears to begin to berate his subordinates, with him having a change of thought, and now turns his gun on the mother. Stella tries to save the mother, but Bisho is able to stop her, and uses her own strength against her. He then uses the mother to try and negotiate with Stella, to get on her knees and apologize, taking off her garments, with this angering Ikki, who's watching all this unfold on the balcony above. Ikki tries to go down to Stella before she takes all of her garments off, but is stopped by Nagi, who reveals that Shizuku is currently creating a water barrier, with this being unnoticed. At that moment, Shizuki uses Shoha Shuren, and Michelle orders his subordinates to shoot the hostages. He then sees Ikki and tries to shoot him, but this doesn't work, as Ikki draws out his own device and uses his 7-sword technique, Reiko, to cut off Bisho's arms. Bisho's then bound to Ikki, and his subordinates are knocked out by Stella. Bisho, however, still had one more subordinate, who was hiding amongst the hostages, and demands that Nagi unbind Bisho by holding another woman hostage. However, another Academy Blazer comes in, and is able to knock out the subordinates and Bisho, saving everyone. A person who has been identified by Ikki as Kirihara, who knows Ikki very well. The students go outside the mall, and Shizuki and Stella both agree they didn't like Kirihara, who's currently being praised by the girls. Ikki, however, thanks him for saving them. Kirihara, however, responds by calling Ikki weak, with his angering Stella, who begins to argue with Kirihara, saying that he's the one weak in comparison to Ikki. Kurogane then simply just laughs at them, claiming that Ikki was the one who's too scared to face him in the battle. Kurogane then tells Ikki to look at his student handbook, where it's revealed that Kurogane will be his first opponent for the selection battle. Kurogane then leaves, calling him the weakest one while doing so. And this is where we leave off in today's video. If you liked today's video, make sure to leave me a like. As always, be back with some more anime content later.